The countdown to the NBA draft continues on, and the rumors and reports continue to swirl. With every day, there does seem to be a lesser and lesser chance of the Philadelphia 76ers taking a swing on Rutgers product Ace Bailey with the third overall pick. We have a huge new report regarding how his stock may be dropping in the NBA draft, possibly out of the top five altogether. I'm going to break down exactly what we know at this current point, talk through my concept of what this all means to Ace Bailey, and how much people should read into this pre-draft process over what he's shown on the actual court itself, and why VJ Edgecombe has certainly seemed to solidify himself as the leader in the clubhouse for who the Sixers selection will be. Now, before I dive fully into things, do want to remind you guys, as always, to make sure you are hitting that subscribe button. At this point in time, only 31.5% of you guys watching these videos right here on Sixers Digest have subscribed to the channel just yet. Want as many of you as possible a part of the Sixers Digest family. There are plenty more exciting times on the horizon for the Sixers team, and want each and every one of you along for the ride. Now, to dive into the story of today, first, I want to start off with this report from Draft Express here that writes Ace Bailey's draft stock has fallen due to his unwillingness to visit several teams and the fact that he has yet to conduct a single workout, per at Draft Express, which is Jonathan Givony there. Bailey believes he's a top 3 player in the draft and wants to be selected by a team that will provide a clear pathway to stardom. Quote, Bailey's pre-draft workout strategy has perplexed some observers, as he has yet to conduct a single known workout to date, having declined invitations from several teams within his draft range. Sources say Bailey's camp has informed interested teams that they believe he is a top 3 player in the draft, but also seeks a clear pathway to stardom, perhaps feeling comfortable that a team will trade up to get him at number 3 or 4 should he drop. So the Ace Bailey conversations as a whole have been bizarre from start to finish. That he is for sure the most polarizing prospect that I can ever remember during the pre-draft process, and he has not helped his case with any of these. To dive a little bit deeper on this from the Sixers perspective here, we do have this write-up from Crossing Broad, which writes a lot of the same stuff but does tie it to Philadelphia directly. And shout out to Kyle Pagan, who writes, the mock drafts are mocking 8 days before the NBA draft, and it looks like VJ Edgecombe is the pick for the Sixers, at least according to Jonathan Givony of ESPN. This spot has been mostly reserved for Ace Bailey, but according to Givony, Bailey initially refused to visit the Sixers for a private workout before scheduling one later this week. Quote, Edgecombe takes over the spot from Ace Bailey in ESPN's mock draft after a positive visit to Philadelphia, where sources say he made a strong impression in private workouts as well as in meetings with front office and ownership. He appears to be the, quote, leader in the clubhouse currently, with Bailey losing momentum after refusing to visit, initially unsatisfied with his search for a proven pathway to development. However, Bailey is scheduled to work out in Philadelphia at the end of the week, and we'll see if he's able to sway the tides in his favor. The feedback from his interviews at the Combine in Chicago was not all that positive, with some teams expressing concern about his lack of preparation and focus. NBA executives say Bailey has been polarizing in internal front office conversations because of questions about his feel for the game and lack of polish, creating a wider draft range than initially expected. Now, as far as the actual conversation for him and the Sixers here, did want to bring up this report from Sixers Adam Aronson here, who says part of DX's write-up on the Sixers trending towards Edgecombe and away from Bailey at number 3 overall mentioned Bailey initially refusing to visit without a, quote, proven pathway to development. A Sixers source refuted that, saying Bailey never refused to visit. He'll be in town this week. So a little bit of, I guess, difference in the optics of how this is exactly being reported here. What we do know is what happened last week is Jake Fisher being very open and reporting that VJ Edgecombe came into Philadelphia. The full-scale workout that Edgecombe did go through, including a guy like Tyrese Maxey making the flight from Texas back to Philadelphia to be at the workout and be at the meeting that he had with the entire organization. That it was certainly a let's see if this guy is a key piece of the future type meeting, and Edgecombe is fully in that discussion. Obviously, things seem to have gone very well, but in that same report that Jake Fisher did drop, he mentioned to this point, while he could still have one in the future, there is no scheduled workout with Ace Bailey. We'll flash forward a little bit that day, about an hour later, and there is an immediate report from Jake Fisher that he's adding to that article saying that Ace Bailey will be working out with the Sixers later this week. We have not got any news as far as when that has happened. I'm sure it's probably a behind closed door thing and something they're keeping a bit hush-hush, that this Sixers organization has certainly operated with a closed door policy, particularly in recent years since Daryl Morey has took over here. That even a guy like Jared McCain last year, there was no workout for Jared McCain, and Morey even goes out after the fact saying we knew it was a guy we were targeting. We didn't want other teams to be aware that was a guy that we were targeting, so we're fine looking from afar watching the tape. Now, a bit of a different situation when you have the third overall pick and have this much control. McCain obviously being the 16th pick, you just need him to be on the board and last to that point. For the third pick, you kind of control things here. For Ace Bailey directly, I've stood here from the beginning and talked about I believe he's the third best player in this draft. That is the selection I would make at third. I think a lot of the conversations have been overblown in this, and some of the quotes that have popped up, such as him saying, I know I'm a good passer, but sometimes it's time for me to get buckets, or sometimes it's time for me to be the guy that shoots the ball, or comments like, these aren't bad shots, they're ones that we work on. I get that that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. It works when you're playing well, and it doesn't when you're not. If you're Anthony Edwards or Kobe Bryant saying that quote, people are all in. People love that kind of stuff. But if you're not that caliber of talent, it reads a little bit differently there. And for Ace Bailey specifically, who is 18 years old, has not played a second in the NBA to this point, I probably would have a little bit of a different tune in the way that I'm going about things here. But nonetheless, he is a guy that from all accounts is a strong personality, a guy that plays with energy on and off the court, that he is a guy that makes his impact felt from a personality standpoint when he walks in the room. In general, I view that largely as a positive. And another comparison that I would bring is to bring it back to Anthony Edwards. Let's not forget that after his lone season as Georgia, there was so much made about should he actually be selected with the number 1 overall pick. There were a lot of similar red flags to what we're saying with Ace Bailey with Anthony Edwards there. And one of those being sort of his personality, that he talked a lot in the pre-draft process, that if it were up to him, he would be a football quarterback right here, but he was naturally better at basketball, that he doesn't have a true love for basketball. It's just what he was naturally best at. And there was, are you actually going to take a guy number 1 overall who doesn't have this passion for the game? Well, flash forward just a couple years, and Anthony Edwards is one of the best players in the entire NBA. So obviously we see how that. Now to slant this the other direction, if I really want to squint at VJ Edgecombe, I can see a little bit of Anthony Edwards in his game, the way that they fly through the air, similar athletic profiles there. But nonetheless, to circle it back to Ace Bailey here, I think the biggest swing factor has always been how he will adjust to his role. I think the clear trajectory or this pathway to development that he wants to put out there, that would be with the Philadelphia 76ers. A guy who I think is a perfect example who went about things the right way in his pathway to development was Paul George. Think about Paul George when he first came out of Fresno State. This was a guy that struggled as a shooter, was a below 30% three-point shooter in his first season at the NBA, and was not this guy who was capable of taking guys off the dribble, taking these tough shots in a way that Ace Bailey already loves to do. But what Paul George did was that he found a clear role for himself and then added a little bit to his play year in and year out. Flash forward just a couple seasons in the league, all of a sudden we're talking about Paul George as an all-star. A couple more seasons, all of a sudden we're talking about him as one of the best players in the entire world there. That was the pathway that Paul George took. That is a very similar pathway to what I could see Ace Bailey flourishing on. If he's willing to buy in on this Sixers team from day one, where he's just taking catch and shoot three-pointers from the corner, where he's just getting active in transition, playing high-level defense, and then as the power balance of this entire team begins to shift as Joel Embiid ages, Paul George, his contract winds down, there is a direction for Ace Bailey to step into a larger role. But if he's not willing to buy into that from day one, this kind of is a moot point here. That this isn't something that we can feel confident about, and that those are the reasons why you should be bringing guys in for interviews, having these type of conversations, having them work out. And by all accounts, from what is going down, is things have not gone well on the Ace Bailey front there. There's enough noise, enough smoke at this point to make me believe this is not all just lip service here. This is not just attempting to manipulate the market or see what the trade offers could be. It does feel like, at least with some teams, there's legitimate red flags with Ace Bailey. And there's been talking points about this for several months. It hasn't felt as strong, to me at least, until this week that it has really come on. And this coincides with our report that once again that VJ Edgecombe, the leader in the clubhouse, to be selected with that third overall pick. We obviously know how important that this draft pick is for the Sixers, and I still think that all trades will be on the table. We've talked about the reports have been talking about the Spurs to move up. Dylan Harper is certainly a more sure bet in who he is as a basketball player and the way that he can fit into it. There's also the potential for them to move down. Ultimately, the Sixers have to maximize this. And the one other thing that I would throw on the table here is a guy that we have not talked too in-depthly about. I know that Ryan dropped a video on the channel just a couple days ago, but Con Knipple here. And Con Knipple, for obvious reasons, a guy that we doubt the athleticism, how does it translate here? Con had a faster shuttle time than VJ Edgecombe. He had a higher standing vertical leap than Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, and Richardson and Edgecombe, and a better max vert than Cooper Flagg and Ace Bailey. That's pretty absurd stuff for a guy who plays really physical, can shoot at the ball at an incredibly high level, will have a case for the best shooter in this class. Just want to bookmark that a little as we start to really narrow down our search. We're going to be diving things in from every single angle for the coming days until the NBA draft. Going to also talk about some second round targets or some undrafted targets to keep our eye on as this draft begins to fully unfold. But I think at this current point in the game, I'm ready to accept that Ace Bailey to the Sixers simply may not just happen. We still have plenty of time until the draft actually occurs, and a lot can change up to this point. We obviously don't even know if the workout has occurred for Bailey in Philadelphia yet, but the smoke has gotten too loud here for me to believe that this is a non-story. It does feel that the Sixers are not seeing eye to eye with Ace Bailey directly on what his role would be, what the fit would be, and ultimately that the selection does seem to be trending the other way. So let me know what you guys think about all this. I still think at the end of the day, as much noise as there is about this, and depending on how the conversations go when that workout does occur, I'm still not out on the Ace Bailey experience. And the number one thing that is worrisome to me, if you pass on this kid and he becomes the next Jason Tatum or the next Jaylen Brown or is tearing up the NBA world for the next decade, that's going to suck forever, man. And that is something that I can't quite get over myself. So I get the red flags are there. I get he's not perfect. And again, the interview, how he talks and how he sees the vision for, once again, this quote unquote pathway to development. If they can kind of get a little bit of buy-in, and Paul George is a guy that he obviously respects, and I see a lot of similarities in their game and in what their potential pathway would be, I still wouldn't be afraid to pull the trigger on Ace Bailey there. But ultimately, we will see what happens to this point. Do want to hear from you guys in the comments. And one more time, I want to remind you guys to make sure you are hitting that subscribe button. Once again, 68.5% of you guys watching these videos have not subscribed to Sixers Digest just yet. So make sure you're hitting that button, dropping a like on this video here. I'll be back. Talk with you next time. Peace.